ready to go, we don't need it. Oh, the one thing was the Aaron.
Well, I want a lady call me.
Yeah.
Close drive.
Okay.
But you're gonna show
Say people like your house on the market. Junk. Nobody does. We can get on somebody. A lot of code enforcement. Somebody to get. Say people. You can't just. Colson Parkway. On the park somewhere.
Yes, ma'am.
I have to drive by and look and see, nothing we could do, I mean, they gotta haul that into.
It's been empty for a while, hours.
It's very bad.
We need a computer up? Right.
No. 30 seconds, it takes a while to do.
Don't need a computer up?
You can have it too.
They supply some of them. Or maybe that's because I wasn't here to get them, I don't know. It says mayor on the line.
There. John, did you have a copy of this from the engineer's deal about the water well? On the road?
Yeah, I think they saw it.
Did?
It's just an extra copy that I'll take it.
So. Well, this is just the letter that was sent to the city. Me and Sean and. No, not that.
No, well,
Do you have a copy of, everything else that was in there? The attachment in the email? Yeah.
that was just on my job. That's the. I think that's
Hey, Sean, do you have a copy of, like those email attachments, you know? Do you have a copy of those?
Yeah, they're right here, and I think we'll, oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, running. Oh, good, that's better. I will find when I can
Take a roll call.
Yeah, red golf.
That's probably why. Yeah.
You have, here's the two scenarios. Why, heat, well, I said this to Cody and Cody.
Simon was in his office, I wonder if he, wanna go grab it?
Yeah, or, maybe I'm just trying to change my tab for the other one.
Oh, he's come up.
Put the old one in.
Yeah.
I'll let Lloyd do.
Yeah. They do not. I don't know, it's gotta be, it's gotta be just as. I brought mine, but I don't think it's.
I get my technology figured out because that's one thing. More complex than I've been. No.
And then it's gotta be 12 characters. 12? And then a special character.
That's me 12, that's my problem, okay. Wendy, this is what I was trying to read up from, I'm so grateful for where you from. It's like, oh my goodness. Oh, oh.
If you do, I know, I get it.
No,
I know, I can't
That's not a me problem. That's not like I did with the button.
Anyway, I told him.
If Jim wants to watch it, you don't have to watch it, you can just watch
There's several other. Well, not a lot, and if we do it right. But that. That's what that's about. Yeah, that makes sense the way you do it.
Or you can begin.
Well, we,
It was 5:30.
5:30 for supper?
No, it was 5:30 for the whole thing.
Oh, okay, I apologize, and I thought it was 5, and I didn't want to start until we were supposed to do so. I will call this meeting to order, this, work session, and, please join me for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, let's see, the next thing on, agenda is to approve the agenda.
Roll call.
Roll call. Let's roll call, please.
Mayor Terry Wyckoff,
Here.
Vice Mayor Jacqueline Wells, Councilmember Aaron Durst, Councilmember Darrell Gardner,
Here.
Councilmember Jabari Martinez,
Here.
Councilmember Linda Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Chris Weissenberg.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda.
That we approve the agenda for April 14, 2022.
The motion made and seconded to approve the agenda for April 14th, 2022. Any discussion? Online voting? Aye. Aye. Aye.
Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 5 yeas.
The next thing on the agenda is new business. And I will turn the floor over to, Metcalf.
Thank you. So I want to start with just a quick overview of the agenda for tonight. I want to start with the general fund and the reason why we need to decrease our expenditures. I'll go through the current status, the amount that's needed, a really good conversation about ways that we can do that together. It really needs everyone's help in the room. Then I want to go through the current status of each enterprise fund. There's a couple of rate increase proposals. There's water and recycle would be the only ones. And I want to jump into the capital expenditures and what we can do, this fiscal year until, we get a little bit further along, it. Then we can jump into impact assistance. I know that was an item that council was. And I have a bunch of miscellaneous items that, from previous budget meetings, nonprofit and ancillary funding, free dump days, cost of living, salary study, and basically anything that, we'd like to talk about. And then at the very end, I'll just go through this, budget schedule. So, starting from the very beginning here with the general fund, one of the things, I just have this sheet myself. So, some of our actuals, when I got here, we're doing pretty decent with our general fund. Our revenues did exceed our expenditures. And then going into FY '21, we had literally the best year I think the city of Rawlins ever had on revenue. It was almost $19 million in our general. But what's occurred since then is that our revenue is now projected to be kind of back to normal. We're not, that, and that extra money should be treated as one-time money and not. That's what we need to do. We really need to bring ourselves back into a better status. So right now, when I first came here, the difference between our expenditures and our revenues in the general fund was about $3 million difference. That's what we need to work on, is we need to bring that back down so that our expenditures and our revenues in the operating, or in the general fund are close to the same. So that, and then all this excess money that we get from wind farm development and all that is treated as one-time money. So I've been spending, a lot of time with Dan Enzo, and I have some good things to share, as far as his confidence in fund balances, especially in our enterprise fund and the general fund. So I've got some good, solid stuff to share with everyone tonight. So starting with general fund, so basically all of the last times that we met together, we had all the proposals for FY '23, all those changes, and then I updated that budget just with some of the small changes that we made as a group. So that's in there. And basically, if we were to adopt the FY '23 budget, just as we all reviewed it last time, essentially, then what that would end up looking like for us is that we would still have our, and actually let me add to that. So if we adopted that, and if we took, let's say, like 6 or 7 vacant positions out of that, to try and start decreasing the expenditures that we have, then at the end of FY '23, we would still have our $4 million in reserve. Always need to have that in there. That should be something we should really just like never touch. And then I think that we'll have about $4.3 million as a fund balance in the general fund. And then he's increased the contingency in the general fund to $500,000, because, you know, in our other funds, we've had like a contingency of $100,000. He portioned it to the general fund in the sides. He thinks it would be a wise idea to have that at $500,000, then the other one can be at the 100. And recycle, he moved that down to a $50,000 contingent. So he's given, I committed him to give me this number and tell me his confidence level with this. So he's saying that he's 100% confident that we'll have that $4 million in reserve, and we would have $4.3 million, in capital, essentially, that we could spend. So, and to go a little bit further here, so the difference between our expenditures and our revenues in the general fund as it sits for FY '23 as it looks right now would be, we would be in a deficit of negative, $2.6 million. If we took those, just, I'm not saying we're taking the specific ones that we have right now, but if we were to take 7 vacant positions, that would bring the deficit that we need to make up to just a little bit under $2 million. And Dan has put together a really great list of non-salary stuff. So it'd be all of our materials and supplies and all of that, including capital. And if we were to take those proposed cuts, that would bring us to a deficit of $1.2 million that we would need to come up with. That's kind of what we gotta work on, is assuming we were to take his recommendation. And what he did is he looked at the past 3 fiscal years, on the non-salary benefits items, and he looked at the worst case scenario of what each department spent, and basically set their budget at that. So it saves a bunch of money, but it brings it down to, we know we're not gonna crush any department by bringing it down to those amounts. Does that make sense? So, basically, that's, any questions so far of what I just explained? Because a little bit. Does it all make sense where we're at with that?
Well, different than what we,
Yeah.
I mean, already spending a lot of money. That, supposedly we had $15 million somewhere. Said about that our water line fixed. Oh, and I said that, this is a bit different.
We have Dan Izzo's projected cuts of what he's got right now, that we could have a copy of and see.
I don't have a copy of it, but okay, so what I'd like to have just a collaborative discussion on is, and I know I can speak for our department heads, and what we wanna do very last is impact positions. What we wanna do before that is any other thing that we can possibly do to not impact positions, to bring that money down. Have you really talked to that a little bit? I know you did a little research on that, and then let's just kind of have a good conversation, and really just kind of looking for council's direction of like, how do you want us to approach?
So I went through, and have done a lot of research on positions that we've added, over the past, since 2018, 2017, and just gone through, and actually I think we've done a great job, so the impact on the budget is not as expensive as it may seem. We've added, about 11 positions, but in total, it's only about $200,000, which is really not a whole lot, for 11 positions. That's 2017. And that was in the general fund. I don't have the enterprise type of things, I haven't done that. And then, so I can go through and talk about some of those positions, if you're interested in any of those positions. A lot of them we offset, by decreasing other positions. So for instance, we created the, community development director position. We offset that by not, by taking out the operations manager position. Does that make sense? A lot of them were like that. Or we were contracting with IT with Converge One, and we, have decreased that contract and put it in a full-time person. Makes sense? And so a lot of those have been that type of thing. We, decreased our seasonal budget so that we could put in a recreation programmer. We've done a lot of work in that way and with positions. Some of the things that I went through as I've, done some research on, other options that we can do besides reducing actual positions, doing a RIF, we could do on my little paper. There's a whole bunch of options that Employers Council, has in some documentation that I actually got from Wendy. We could, which we're doing, eliminate excess expenditures. We could go down, in our expenditures. We could eliminate excess unfilled positions if that's where we want, and to me, the focus would be excess. What we don't necessarily decide that we need. We could do salary freezes, salary reductions. We could do something like a reduced work they suggested. Attrition is another thing. The positions that, people vacate for whatever reason they do, we just would assess whether we really want to or really need to rehire those positions. Employee buyouts, early retirement, are something, sabbaticals. I know that the state did like a furlough day type situation, they did something like that, rotating days off, that type of thing. Restricting overtime is absolutely something that we can really look at, is restricting that. Obviously, we would have to look particularly about our, first responders and that, because that may not work for them, but it may work for others. Part-time versus full-time employment is another thing that we can look at. Flex time, using, extra time or those things that are put in and flexing those out at other times when there's less. Does that make sense? Cross-training, so sometimes if, an individual, if we identify that we may not need, so many individuals in one division, we could cross-train them to move them over to another division that may have an opening. Maybe streets versus utilities or water, or whatever, you know, there's a whole bunch that you could do. Voluntary retirements, if people are, up into retirement age, that or do. The other thing is we could really look at our benefits to address some benefit reductions. So some of the ideas that Employers Council has, or alternatives to a RIF situation.
My recommendation for the council, what I'd really like to do is, we've scheduled a meeting tomorrow with all the department heads, and we wanna take a really deep dive on all of those things and collectively talk, you know, what's most important to each, you know, to employees here. And then basically work on decreasing all these costs that we're talking about. Basically do our very best to decrease this and then bring it back to council. Here's how much we were able to bring it down. So if that's an okay philosophy with city council, that's what I would like to do, take that deep dive, and then we'll bring this back to council. What, in the tentative budget schedule that I put together here, what we'd like to do is provide the city council with a new proposed budget on the 22nd that you can come and pick up. So it would be, quite a bit of work that we need to do, but we'll do our very best to get it as far along as we can. Is there any conversation that you want to have on that?
How many people, more people do we have in the building? Guy with the shovel, guy that's making the estimate, inside this building, how many people do we have now?
Number 11 added, so,
You know,
oh yeah, you got this one in there.
I want to start out by saying too that, here, I'm sure that house is gonna make one better, but we just Cadillac with that. All the car.
I think you're absolutely right.
Very, very, very supportive of, in our apartments, that are actually in that ditch, I broke or, but out there when it, and are fixing water lines or last year or maybe the year before that, we were short-handed, we couldn't.
Only thing I have to say about it is, I don't wanna lay anybody off, it's an unenjoyable thing a person could possibly ever think about doing. But I wanna make sure that if we do layoffs, that we lay off the correct people. I don't wanna be, I don't wanna be laying off people that have shovels in their hands, and that's just not, I'd rather save money some other place. As far as hacking away at their benefits, that's just another thing that creates a hardship on employees. We talk about taking them from full-time to part-time. Now what you're doing is making them where they can't work here anymore because they aren't making enough money, they have to go out and get another job, and then they go out and get another full-time job, and then they quit us anyway. So when you start shearing those kinds of things off of our employees, number one, it's not fair to the employees. Number two, it's, when you start reducing people from full-time to part-time and stuff, that's just as, harmful to them personally as letting them go, in my opinion.
I agree. I think that, it's very important that we have these, that it be very strategic, that we address the entire plan in place, and we know exactly why we're doing that. Whether it be budget line items, whether it be addressing benefits, whether it be addressing whatever we have to address, strategically got into it to make sure we do it in the, best possible way in a hard situation. So I'm totally on board with what you're saying, is that I would like to do.
I wanna say first and foremost, that not my idea of having any kind of fun is having to do a RIF. I've been involved in layoffs my whole career in oil and gas, right? And it's not fun having to look for new employment. I understand cuts happen and that's the way life rolls. I don't wanna do that. But I think if we work together, strategically, we could reduce the amount that would possibly have to happen. I'm looking through a lot of different things here, right? And you already said you're gonna dive into it. But if you're freezing all these positions and not hiring people, I got several right away. We pay for an hire program, right? That's $5,000. Might seem petty, but $5,000 could be an eighth of someone's employment, right? In the scheme of things at the janitor level. So when we're talking about cuts and stuff, we need to cut, I believe we need to cut those kind of programs out, right? I asked for that to be separated out, so I understood and knew what departments they were under. For like the SCADA system, I understand that's in water, sewer, stuff like that. It's out of the enterprise fund. But when I look down and see all this stuff, I can't totally compare it all out. That's why I was asking that, to see which department has to have what IT program there is, right? I look over here, I see, $23,743 in, inventory for IT. I'm not saying you don't need it, but can we survive survive without that inventory for another year, right? Can individuals go with their laptops and we only buy what we absolutely have to use at that point in time? 23,000, right? Plus 5,000, there we go, 28,000 right there. That's half of someone's salary at mid to upper range. See what I'm saying? So I think we really need to dive into that kind of stuff. I got a lot of stuff highlighted out here, that I wanna share out with you guys, but I don't wanna take up all the time on all that stuff too, but I do wanna know about, I've asked this before, Sean, copiers, you know, we pay $40,000 for copiers, okay? How many copiers does that give? How many copiers is in this building alone? In my aspect and my thought process, okay, is we could have a central copier right here in this building, central copier in the Public Works building, right? There is some private stuff that has to go through, I get it, and that would be probably HR, legal, and your office, stuff like that. But I don't see why we couldn't cut a lot of that stuff out and that kind of thing. So I challenge you to go through that stuff, you know, I've been working a lot on it myself the last several days, looking at different things, and I got a lot of ideas, but I don't see 1.2 million coming out of it, but I hate to say that, but I do see a lot that can come out to save some of those positions.
My first strategy in my mind was to do no harm, and that on supplies or, projects or those kinds of things. That's my preference. I do not want to have to do it in any shape or form. Have to do what we have to say, that I would be sorry that we'd have to know that. But I looked over everything I could possibly look over, and I think there's some room, I went back, checked out that list, and I think, in talking to the board, when we talked to YDOT about the bridge, $100,000 in the impact fund, we don't need that to use $100,000 offset some of the general fund. I added up all of the references that the department head did, comes to $963,830,000. So that's the list I think we can try to match. There's 2 police cars in there, but I'm not sure if those were absolutely necessary, but I want to tell you, the fire department is just now barely back up to full capacity. We don't have enough police officers for what we have. I don't want to do anything with personnel and guards, so I would rather chip away at what do we need, what can we put off till next year. Also use whatever, let me just give you a rundown on the impact fund. Impact fund, we have $114,600, that's just little things. Then without the park department, $194,600, and then with the park, that's the 30 there to fix the park. That comes to $289,600. But I did notice a lot of the vehicles were already, out or being brought to us for bid. So that's another thing we can look at for, that. So that $100,000 will help us out a lot. Plus, if we want to stick with, maybe some of these that really don't need, like, trailers and stuff, maybe we can budge on that a little bit to take off this list. And then let me say a little bit about the enterprise fund, because it's been my major, been watching that for 18 months to 2 years, because this was here. It isn't fun for you either. But let me just say, enterprise funds, I don't have as much heartburn about right now, because Dan Izzo has given us kind of a roadmap of where we need to go. And I think we could, what we'll need to do, the only thing that we don't have when we talk about landfill equipment, I want those would be leases. And the scraper, no, it's the loader that's already been bought out the impact. The point about enterprise funds, if we can raise those. Our number one problem, the elephant that's sitting in this room, is the $20 million water problem. But when we do that, if we look at what we can put in that loan or grant situation, I'm hoping if we go, and I think farm home, or farmers home, and they have utility money or capital money that sometimes they do give a grant. So if we can do that, but here again, we haven't gotten the last word from the governor's office on all this infrastructure money, somewhere around $50 million. So we're having to pass a budget that we don't know where or how much that $20 million is gonna cost. So it's gonna affect what we do with the enterprise fund. So I suppose we can come back in the budget after the fact, if we know if WIB is gonna give us our funding. We can still loan, they still loan money at a lower percent. Also banks, correct me if I'm wrong, Nikki, because most banks have more money sitting there, and they need to loan it out to municipalities and for public good. I forget what it's called, but there's some potential there that we can go back. But I think the elephant in the room is that we don't know tonight and won't know by the time this budget is done and where that $20 million. But here to look at the whole lineup of what our needs are. I'm not gonna lose my thought. We've got to look at the Glen addition. Here, if we can combine some of that, of course, that's enterprise funds, but if we can combine some of those needs in that water project, whole Kingsville distribution system and water treatment plant, there's leaks, you've already got the filters, 2 of them. So then there's 2 other things coming off the impact list for the filter leaks for the sewer treatment plant. So those are covered. So, if we can take a look at combining some of that into that 20 million, that would take a big hit off. And my question is legally, I don't know, if loaning those money to the enterprise fund or how we deal, that's something we can talk about later, but it's really crucial, you know, where it depends on whether we raise people, and we have to do it to the point where we can't get around it. If we raise it to $4 for the, what do you call it, not right, fixed water bill, and it goes, he's recommending $4. We know what we needed for the $20 million, we can do that up to 5 and not really hurt our citizens and still pay back that huge $20 million and do it in phases, so we're not. That's my thoughts on that. Only question that I have, one sheet that was, this one, where the department has told us that they there's all these water, distribution lines and things that need to be fixed. I don't know if there's gonna be any money in the water and sewer to do our regular $1 million a year maintenance, and I think it's really, really important, as we use penny money on some of these things. There's only gonna be 2 projects anyway. Edinburgh, and last week and six penny money. I'm trying to say, we need those water and sewer money to fix water breaks, to fix, like we've done for years. So those are coming out of the enterprise sewer. So that's my thought, that if we can hang on to what we have for trade, or if, even if we have to balance the budget, we have to use reserves to it, hope to improve it for next. Then that's where I'm coming from. I think there's some budgeting here that we're doing. But you can manipulate it around, swap it out so that you can, what you need. That's what I'm coming from.
Councilman Martinez?
I agree with you. But from the beginning, I was telling this council, and I think I yelled it in here a couple of times, have this impact to use that money for impact. That money like I felt it should be used. Water, police department, fire department, that we have to have because of the impact. Started tapping that type of money to build dog parks and skateboarding ponds and all. That wasn't the way to go. It earmarked that money for things that we have to run this. Don't have water, we don't run. Don't have police protection, we're in problems. If we have fire problems, gotta get them, that's where I was coming from. Go down that list again and make a decision what we wanna do with that impact money. That's my take on that, and as far as the employees are concerned, to work on that after we take care of the first problem of that we get what we.
And could I suggest, Mr. Martinez, concern, on impact, Tabari would like you to look at what has already been spent.
It doesn't make it right. The problem was that I felt at the beginning that these funds, that's what we should have been concentrating on, what was being impacted. It had to do with the fact that we didn't have officers on our fire department. Water system was having problems. Those are the things where the impact should have went.
Well, I understand, but we deliberately did not up the vision off here because it's one-time money goes away. And if it's not on this list, we couldn't sustain it for more than 1 year. So that's why it's all things that we needed to do. And as you recall, we instructed the former city manager to go to the industrial fighting board. And the formula that he used was so that we could take off the measures to lessen the impact on ambulances, all of the departments that are serving the public. And I think we did take off the 2 projects that you objected to. And a lot of these are needed stuff, ballistic shields and stop sticks and stuff. I think those are things that are appropriate. But like I said though, if you will look through that, you'll see what's left, and that's what I was telling you, that $289,600 is not allocated. But the question is, a lot of that goes to fix the parks that we have some sidewalk and concrete problems and some. I don't wanna cut them, but we do have about $114 million around. And reallocate, that's a good.
Spend out of the general fund and take it out of the impact funds, is what you're saying?
Yes, thank
I
you.
have one quick question on these papers you handed out, like the blue, what's that?
The blue is the carry forward item.
One of the things that's being carried forward there, I don't know how this works, so I'm asking, because I don't know. One of the things in there is a feasibility study to, about building a combination building, police, fire building. We don't have money to build it anyway, I just don't think we should make the study. And once we get the money, or know where the money would be coming from, then I would have no objection to that, but at this time, where we don't know how many years it would be before we would have the money to fulfill that, the study wouldn't be any good anyway by that time. So, even though it's a carryover, I'm not sure how all that works, but it's not been spent. I don't think it should be.
If the carryover too, we should not spend carryover.
No, on this, I'm just talking about this one particular line item.
And I wanted to, if I could address that really quickly too. The problem that we have is that the last 2.5 years, or last 2 budget cycles, we have not known what our carryover was because of the audit. Why we are where we are. But I'm not gonna pick on the police department, but I am. But some of these are necessary and some of them aren't. And so I want them to go through their blue and see what they absolutely have to have, and there's some room in there maybe to reallocate some of that to the things that their police department leadership. But I'm just making a suggestion that if they're carryovers and haven't been ordered,
I think I'm getting what you're saying, I see several items, not just that, for carryover, that it said those were okay to go ahead with, but I myself personally, I don't think it's okay to go ahead with that kind of carryover. Those items, and go ahead and get them if we can use that money to offset some other stuff, as it was just, still a carryover, we just don't get that, the projects, or those.
But you're gonna have to be specific about that, you know, like for instance, and I don't disagree with you, Chris, I'm not disagreeing, I'm agreeing with you, but we have to also be careful that if it's a carryover and it's something we have to have it, but like the example I just gave, that carryover makes no sense, so if you, on the next meeting or whatever, if you come up with things that are absolutely specific that way, for sure bring those.
Well, what
But be
I'm-
specific, not just blanket.
I wanna see everything that was a carryover, right, I wanna see all the carryover stuff that has been carried over that it's supposed to be okay to be spent, go ahead and spend. That's what I'm saying, I don't think it's okay to go ahead and spend it until we actually see 100%, okay, with what is okay and not okay, right? And so then we can maybe reuse that money for something that might be more needed, or more of a necessity for the upcoming year on the capital project. So that's where I'm getting at, and no matter what is on the carryover list, right? If it's not at the top of the priority of this year, fiscal year, then they don't spend it at all. That's what I'm getting at.
With some consideration that they might not have put it as a priority because they already know it's coming, assuming it's coming because it's a carryover. So I would like them, unlike you, I would like them to consider the things that are a carryover as,
New
don't
capital.
look at it as a carryover.
Look at it as a new capital item is what I'm saying.
That makes sense.
That's what I'm getting at too, yes.
I have a question. do we have enough money to carry out this year's budget for that? So these would be already in the budget. But if we can save some of that and it ends up being the carryover from 23, then that gives us more money to pull out of general fund, or with that carryover money.
And make sure we have the right priorities. And in fact, I think, a little bit further in our agenda here, I think we could, a closer look, because kind of thing we could spend, he has no issues whatsoever if we were to spend $1 million on capital. We could go in that list right now with our group here, and, or we could come up with it and come back if you'd like, but I think we could make some decisions.
I'd like to say to, everybody, just because we say no this year doesn't mean we shouldn't be forward to the next year. So it's good to have it here, good to carry, it forward and have it on the list so that if we do get any more, it, impacts the population. But obviously, I agree with the mayor, feasibility study for our, it's been on the work for about 3 years to have a new fire department / police department. Well, I'd absolutely love that, I just don't funded it last week. Yes? All for water.
So, some of the takeaways that I'm hearing from everyone right now, we need to take a close look at the priorities, at the carryovers, and look at priorities again, same concept. Probably the key thing is try and be creative and look at every way that, you know, collectively we can look together and figure out every way that we can decrease, and then come back and see where that leads.
I have one suggestion too, Sean, when your department head budget, where when you start it, you take it out of 1 year, half of it out, but you're doing all in one summer, so that you leverage your funds for the year. It's just one of those things that you could, the leasing on equipment, like police cars, if we absolutely have to have a police cars because we have 14, then let's look at leasing. Government has, programs that we can get into, that I was gonna say on the RTU unit, there used to be, energy money to borrow at an almost no cost. And we did that to put the furnace in this building years and years ago. So take a look at that too. Anymore, but
We're also told that on Edinburgh, that probably wasn't a underground water problem, it was more of a broken line. That fixed and out the water flows, gave us some money. Could be saved. Is that where you read it from the?
The Edinburgh is on.
I was thinking that the problem was not the water, but a less amount of money that would be, which could be used.
But it would have to be, isn't that a special purpose tax project?
Yeah, any,
just the street only, not the utility.
but it could be more money that's used on one or the other 6 penny project.
So we can't do utilities.
But it would have to be the 6 penny.
Yeah.
And let me just say, I live out in Highland Hills, and all over the place is that 2% slope that you have coming off I disagree with the engineer. He also needs to also underground. And go out and find that, I guess. That isn't happening. Also water. I really believe it's underground water that comes off. You know,
I used to live out there also and know that for a fact, and, you know, it's, the subdivision that was built up there actually changed some of the flow of, caused the change of the flow of that and caused damage through the Edinburgh, caused more of the change of the flow of the underground water to come down through there. But it's happened over the course of years from that being done up there, so I would agree with Linda on that statement.
something to think about.
The enterprise fund, and I wanna kinda go through those, and then after.
Can we have a 10-minute break?
Okay, you're familiar?
All right, I declare a 10-minute
I heard it, it's at the council meeting, he was talking, when he was looking at Murray Street the other night, and doing all the talking and that's what he was saying. Well, see, I've had, the phone that I have, I'm working it out. Just have the water department go out and take their
usually in or even just take what's our Sorry, I just had to. I don't know, but. Alrighty, I think we're gonna take off again here, so, Sean, go ahead.
So, with the enterprise funds, let's talk about those. The water fund, and I'm gonna give you the fund balances that Dan did those, that.
And do we have that anywhere?
That's in front of us.
Okay.
So just write the numbers down.
Okay, thank you. All right, all right,
It'd be nice to grab one of those real quick, just so I don't have to repeat, because of the.
well, I agree, but I don't wanna go back there, so.
Yeah.
Oh, no worries. Go ahead, Sean.
So, if everyone wants to write this down, so starting with the water fund, fund balance, that Dan is always saying he has 100% confidence that this is our cash balance. Water fund is $1.3 million. Sewer fund is $278,000. Landfill has $1.8. Recycle fund has $29,000. So that's super helpful because that enables us to have some capital discussion, like real capital discussion.
This is what we have.
This is with recommending is that in order for us to be able to operate the pretreatment and be able to operate in our FY '23 budget, that we do a $3 fixed rate, say 30 cents to 40 cents per 1,000 gallons. And what that would do, if you look at expenditures over revenues, is that we would have, 100,000 left over in the operating if we did that. That'll put us in the black $100,000.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
We already tried the pre-treatment for 4 years ago with Carl Smith as our engineer. We concluded it did not work. So why are we going back? Put that to the water, $1 million water problem. And, that, the dollars, I don't think it's gonna cut it if we have to borrow all that money.
No, good, those are really good questions. So Carl was one that not terribly long ago, he said we could try running the pretreatment. I think it's a matter of figuring it out so we can get it to work. I think that it gives us a backup especially while we're going through all these water issues. I would feel better if we had some sort of backup to help us get more water to our reservoir. So I would recommend that we do it. And then your second question, you're correct, that this $3 fixed rate and then 30 cents to 40 cents is only taking into account operating essentially the pretreatment, not taking into account, if we take on a loan, let's say it ends up being $500,000 a year, we probably would need to do a $6 rate instead of the 3, and instead of the 30 cents, 40, it would be 30 to 50. It's almost doubling that amount if we're gonna take on that extra loan, which we have to take on extra loan. But what I would recommend is that we only do what he's saying right here, we just do the $3 and the 20 to 30. And then as soon as we can figure out the loan, and maybe we get a much better deal, maybe we get a 50% grant, and then the loan ends up being, maybe we only need to increase an extra $1 or something, for whatever it may be. But I think we should not, and the council could increase more, just with anticipation that we're gonna need to get that extra money for the loan. Or we could wait and just see what happens. And I'm kinda in favor of just do what's necessary now, and then let's figure out what we actually need to incur for the loan and deal with that next.
I honestly wanna tell you, if we have to raise rates, I really don't wanna do it more. A big deal, cause every time we do it, it's gonna be a big deal. And I honestly believe going from like 3 to 5, instead of just $, increase it $5, that extra $2 is not a backbreaker. I think people understand they're paying more for their water. They have to. That's why we're where we're at, because they haven't. So, if we go to the $5, and then I don't know about the 30 or 40 cents per thousand, but, that also, in most households, that's gonna be more money than the $5 by quite a little bit. I think what we decided last year, like 35,000 gallons, for an average family.
Yeah, it was pretty high.
Higher than I thought. So that'd be 35 times, and so, what, $10 or something, but I just assume go to the $5. I really would, and get it over to one time. And, because we're gonna have the same amount of squealing at 3 as at 5. So we'll be better prepared to service that debt if we go to 5. That's just what I have to say.
I would agree, and I understand that, and I mean, $5 is over the course of a month of individuals, I hate to see someone say $5 makes or breaks, their whole household. I get it, live tight budgets, but it's been how many years since there's been a rate increase in water, and people have to understand inflation. And if they don't understand inflation right now, then they will never understand inflation. Look at the price of gas at a pump, that's called inflation, right? So if they're paying $5 a gallon for gas, they could and pay a little bit extra there. I think the 40 cent, the going to the 40 isn't a bad deal either, even if we do increase. People will notice that a lot on a water bill, especially in the summertime though, when they are, watering their grass, because a lot of people go from a $60 to $100 and some bill from watering their grass. So if they're already at 100, we could see people increase by $20 possibly on some of that stuff, I'd imagine. So I don't know if,
That includes those people.
well, we gotta figure that
That's
out.
another issue.
That's another issue, and here's the deal, is I understand wholeheartedly, we have to fix that water issue at the Glen addition, we have to, right? I don't know if the answer is putting individual meters on their, each corral, I don't know if that's the answer or not, because simple fact is, it's been tried in the past, and they broke, right? I understand technology's updated, but if we have to come up with a different solution to make them even, and across the board where they start screaming at each other's neighbors, down there themselves, then that's what we have to do,
We have to meter that water. That's it. To me, that's another absolute must. We just have to, whatever it takes, that's what we gotta do. Everybody's gotta be on the same page.
If we're trying to tackle it all at once, I would think probably if we did like the $5 or $6, then instead of the 30 to 40 cents, and so what, the $3 and then 30 to 40 brings in about $600,000. So if you just double that, there's another, that's a big loan payment, $600,000 a year on $15 total. You need about $500-600.
And that's 30 to 40 is 600?
30 to 50.
30 to 50 is
And
600?
you would give it, well, so the $3 plus the 30 to 40 generates about $600,000.
I'm looking at this too, at 35,000 gallons a month, which is the most we used, at the 40 cents is, $14. So we'd be talking about raising, or what I was talking about would be raising my water bill, and I have an acre, okay, so I have a larger water bill than a lot of people. It would raise it, by $19 a month. So, to me, that isn't that bad. I think people know their water rates are gonna go up, but I don't wanna do this every year. I wanna do it one time if we can.
If you got the revenue coming in, $5 ain't nothing. Don't have the revenue coming in.
But would you pay, an extra $40 a month and then your neighbor can? That's what it amounts to, we've gotta pay for our water, buddy.
I understand what you're saying, I'm not questioning, I'm just saying, back everything backward, we ought to make sure that everybody's page is paying the same part.
Well, but
That's all I'm asking.
I think we can fix both problems. I do, I think we have two completely separate problems, they both need addressed. I see them as, personally, I see them both as same importance. But if we can't fix them simultaneously, we need to recognize we have to fix them, but we need to fix whatever we can as fast as we can.
I'm agreeing with that. And also, I wanted to say, I don't think the public, yes, they're all gonna be upset because other things are going up by 8.9% right now, but hopefully, over the next year. But when we have a catastrophic event, this is a 50-year event, we haven't had anything like this in my time being in Wyoming. When we are showing the effort to fix a catastrophic problem that will last another 75 to 100 years, I think the public will not like it, but they'll understand why we have that to have some PR. With the public exactly what he did. Yeah, well, we need to fiddle around with the number. We raise water rates and land bill rates every year. That's when we get in problems.
So if we had an ordinance in place to be able to change, say it was, June first, then we would start receiving the revenue for the change, then goes out, and then we start collecting. So I'll take this as a item that we're pretty soon. Yeah, and I'll leave it up to a good conversation on how. Let's go to the sewer. So the balance again was the $278,000. That's not a lot of money to do capital, but it's enough money in Dan's opinion that we can knock capital items out with that. And Dan recommended that we take a look at the rate next year. We're already looking at water. That's a big one. So and if we get by, I think we should. Please recommend, let's look at that next year. And we're okay on expenditures over revenues right now. So the sewer is currently, it would be a balanced budget, and we have $100,000 contingency, and the sewer is making about almost $100,000 over the expenditure. So we're okay, but it's one that we should look at in the near future.
At the same time we look at that, we need to look at a tiered structure or something, because it's not fair for a motel to pay the same as a individual. So we really need to look at the aspects of that, because it's not fair to anybody in our community. I imagine, yeah. Well, I think if they're on a water meter, they're on the same, well, as an individual.
Well, that brings up a question, and I don't know the answer, and I probably should. But, for instance, like on the trailer parks and stuff where they have a master meter, then, that's all figured into their lot rent. If there's 50 spaces, are they charged 50 trash bills? Such like that, and if not, we need to fix that. That and, I'd have to think more about some of that, but same kind of a theory.
Yeah.
Because one meter's not $3. I mean, mine is, his is, hers is, but when you have 140 rooms you rent now, it's a little different deal.
I would love to, like, in just once we can kind of get past this part of our budget, in just a couple of months, that we form a committee, whoever the council would like to. And we just start to dig, like, okay, let's take a look at, sewer rates, and then go on to the next thing, kind of just fix the issues and have so many different rates to look at.
Well, there's just so many minute things that can't be addressed in one meeting or 1 year even maybe, but that question came up about the landfill rates and all that sort of thing. Make sure that, we're charging them fair. Like $3 for a motel for use of the water fund, that's crazy.
100%, and that's why I said it's tiered system, whatever we gotta do.
So I'd say, items that we'll get to. The landfill, so just again, that's $1.8 that could be quite a bit. That was a lot more than I thought that was sitting there. Good tackle as far as trying to actually purchase one of those items if we wanted to, or we could just go with the lease option too. And then the landfill, if we were to adopt it today, it would be balanced. It would have $100,000 in the contingent, and we would be making about $300,000 at the end of the year. We're making $300,000 a year. This is after paying for the loans.
Well, and I think we need to just we can put off any of that, that's what we need to do to get our cash reserves higher. Ridiculously high would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I agree. If we leave those two, I think between the two of them, it was a little over 2,000 a year or something.
For the full year.
Yep, then we'll still be in the black. There's that one. And then the recycle, that's sitting at $29,000. This is the one, so if we increase $1 to the recycle, that equals about $50,000. So right now, if we adopted the FY '23 budget, we would be about $88,000 in the hole. That's after we took that position out of there, we backed that out. So basically, if we do $1 increase, then that would leave us in the black about $12,000. Not really enough to take care of any capital, so I would recommend we do 3, and that would bring us to about 6,000 in the black each year.
And it's
And then we
3
can
now,
kinda-
is it 3 now?
No, I can't remember exactly, is that right? So if we bring that to 6, then we're really operating really well. And when I say really well, just having 60,000 in the black is just enough to do basic. But they are increasing their revenue, I really think that they're going to, with the, and so I think I would recommend a 3.
I'd like to, thought is, I mean, we're already gonna be increasing a lot on the federal utilities bill, right? I'd really like to not increase on the recycle just yet, and the reason why is because, I mean, we just, they have it in the impact assistance for a, lean-to on that, off of the building, right, which is supposed to generate more revenue because we could ship solid loads and, instead of mixed loads. So I'd like to see what the increase of revenue with that is without increasing a bill right away.
I understand where you're coming from there, but I will tell you that with the addition of the new building, we're not gonna feel the effects of that for a year and a half. Now and then, we've got a problem for a year and a half. We might be able to lower it once that building comes.
So if we don't do any capital. Exactly, and that's what I think we're 29 right now in the black and that's without capital, correct?
Currently, if we adopted our FY '23, we would be negative 88,000. So we have to do $2 just to.
There again, I personally, that's, raising rates, horrible. There's just nothing worse that makes you feel any worse than up here, I swear, but that's why I don't wanna do it more often than we have to. I'd rather do it once, get it over with. We're talking about, like, for instance, in my household, which I have a lot of land and all that, we're talking about a total of, 14 plus 3, $17 difference to that. Here's my usage of water. So, I can tolerate that.
Can someone explain to me exactly why recycle is different than landfill? Because it used to all be one, and we didn't get a recycle charge for lots of years on a utility bill. So I want the answer, because if it could be in one, we're not in a deficit. We're at 1.8 million in the landfill budget, operating off of the same budget. So if someone could explain that to me, I'd like that answer.
I would like to just say something. I don't have the answer to that, but I will tell you this, that I like having them separate so we know. But if we get to the point where we're losing a lot of money on recycling, then we've got to pay a truck and haul it to Casper. So keeping those separate doesn't bother me a bit. It gives me a clearer windshield as far as seeing what's doing what.
I understand what you're saying,
save money because you're not paying to take it to a dump.
And I understand that, but that could be all separated out within spreadsheets and show that. It don't have to be, it could just be all in one deal like it used to be years ago. That's why I'm asking why it was separated into two enterprise funds instead of one as a landfill. We used to never have a recycle bill or a recycle fee on there until we had the dumpsters and stuff stuck around town. Honestly, that's true. When those were put in town, throughout the town, that's when the citizens noticed the recycle bill. So I'd like to know why it's separated out into a different different enterprise fund.
Yeah.
I'll bet it's probably,
Pam might have an answer.
Because, long time city employee, but also, is we didn't have recycling. Started, so I'm wondering if, we didn't have recycling, charge recycling. First started with, we didn't have a recycling.
It was all in landfill.
You're right.
It was all in landfill.
Right, but
You're right,
that's
what
why,
happened, you're right, we started exactly, we just set up recycling without charging. They would go down there and do it. And then later on, the council decided, well, no, we can't be doing it for free, because so then they started charging.
and then we started shipping it, because people started doing it. So that's why we used to not get a recycling down on our bill, because we didn't have recycling, we didn't charge, we didn't take recycling away to get it.
No, I understand what you're saying, I just wanna know why it can't be the same also. I can look into that.
yeah, I can, I would prefer that it stay separate. Budgeting, I think it's a lot clearer. I can look right here and I can tell you exactly where we're at with recycle. That was definitely would be my preference.
I get what you're saying there, but if I look here and I see it separated out also, I see 1.8 million in a landfill budget, we're not in the black.
I think you're right, because one of the big questions in this community, can't get it through their heads. Charge $12 out there, but then we charge water bill. You know, we say, well, why do we get charged twice?
Well,
Oh, two different subjects, one is for
it's kinda like renting a car, you pay so much a day and so much a mile. If you park your car in the driveway, you don't pay much. If you don't take anything to the landfill, you don't pay much, but you have to have a landfill, so everybody pays for the landfill through the 3 to 5 or whatever,
and all this, I get
and,
all,
now, it's,
instead of tying it all together.
So if it's okay now, I'd like to jump onto the, I think we're all on the same page with our fund balances and what we can spend. And if you wanna give any guidance, from the council on some of these items, and I think from all our department heads, let's start with the general fund. So, and I think, Councilwoman Smith mentioned this, that all the items in yellow equate to just under $1 million. So we could approve all the yellow on there. But I do think, what was suggested earlier, if we a little bit more on our own time, spend a little bit more time to maybe reprioritize a little bit, we could come back with, I guess what I'd like to know is if the council could give us a firm number, if it's at $1 million, we'll come back next time and we'll have to reprioritize a little bit and we can deliver that to you. Can you get maybe a firm number?
That's just for capital?
Yeah.
Is that what?
Yeah, capital general.
I'll say my thought on capital, and I stand firm on this, and I don't wanna sound bad about it, but I would actually like to see the council just approve an operational budget right now and amend a budget later for capital when we actually have the audits in and know what carryover actually is for capital. That means 100% of the audits through. So that's my thought.
So
certainty is, but 100% certainty is when that audit comes through and says, we are safe to do this.
Whether we, and can I, actually, let me talk, just, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So we have the FY '20 audit, I think they're doing some tiny little tweaks. We have the actuals for FY '21, that's certain, we know what the actuals are. And so based on those two things together, we have $4 million sitting there. There isn't any guesswork.
At our reserves, or is that the expendable or the?
Expendable. We have the 4 million reserves and we have 4 million expendable. So there isn't any uncertainty there.
I would like to have some discussion on some of these line items, because there's things like branding that we don't have to do this year, that's $80,000. And I know that when stuff that we may not have to expend. I cannot track it.
No, not as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, there's things like, I think it's really important to have programs and get-togethers, for our employees. We have, like 70, we have to take a look at this. Look at maybe turning that back a little. Other things that I saw that. Oh, I was gonna ask about the municipal judge income. We are way down in the fines and revenue. I'd like to have somebody take a look at that and see why we don't have what we have. I'm not gonna speak on IT because I don't know anything about IT, you can tell by my age. Okay,
The other thing I would like to say is now that we've gotten these that have the priorities, better outlined, rather than looking at this whole thing, I'll tell you what, that has helped me a lot focus, but I've only seen it just since I got here, so by the time we have the next meeting, I think, I know I will, and I'm sure everybody else will have more specific ideas about what can we cut, or where can we save some money for next year, and it isn't that I wanna cut everything to death, it's just, I don't wanna end up with empty pockets and then have some problem. Whether we, whether we're totally comfortable or not, I'll tell you what's uncomfortable is when you have the money. And so I don't, even though, Dan says you have $1 million to spend, I don't think we necessarily spend that million unless we see that we need to, and we should be able to pare that down by the next meeting. Does that make sense?
I was talking to one of the department heads, and some of it maybe they may want to reallocate and take some stuff off this list because of some of the impact money, and that there are some things that they could put off and just stuff like that. So until they have that department head meeting, we're gonna see a little bit different picture than what we have tonight. So I guess I wanna give them the opportunity to fall back in a budget form, for fund by fund, budget and by fund, so I can tell what's going on. This is fine, but I can't tell you real opinions on it until I see the funds. But I think the department heads might have a little bit different ideas on what really is necessary than what they've done. So just throw that out there. I could go through this and tell you what I don't want, but I don't think that's productive.
A little story about one time, county, we made some cuts and we thought we were pretty good, and then found out that we had, some of the programs like Spillman isn't, we didn't cut that, but, there are programs like in IT. I wanna know what we have to have, what we absolutely have to have, because there are programs we have to have, like Spillman, and I don't know, there's probably a bunch more. And then but I would also like to know which ones are new, or not, maybe not, maybe they'd be nice but not essential, because I don't understand that stuff. I can read it for a couple of years, and at the end of it, I wouldn't have any advice. So, you know, those sort of things. The IT part of it was very foggy to me, because I don't know what half of it means. So then the word trust comes in, so I'm just gonna have to trust somebody to tell me what's absolutely necessary and what is not.
That's kind of why I was saying, I understand, like, several programs and stuff, not 100%. I'm not up to date on all of it, but that's why I was asking that last meeting when I was here and able to be here, if we could have that IT separated out into their budget, so I know and understand, hey, that is the police, like I know Spillman, right, goes there. I understand, the SCADA is for the water treatment stuff like that. I understand that stuff, but when I don't understand, like the mayor said, you know, it makes it hard to say, okay, if that's a necessity or not.
But
And
that's where trust comes in.
yeah,
Because if we're gonna wait for you to understand all of those.
but no, and I see that, but what I'm saying is if it was broke out into their departments, right, I would be able to see, like, okay, Spillman's here, everybody would be able to see Spillman's here, this and that, right? It would go down the list, like it used to be. That's where I could see that better. So that's where I was at with it.
Okay.
Can I say something real quick? $1.5 million for a dispatch center. Given the financial picture that we have, it's a worthy discussion item, but I think we have to take it off the table for this year, because I don't see how we're gonna finance that. That doesn't mean it's not a good thought, $1 million if we're trying to do, I don't know if we can get to 1.5 unless we get it from the infrastructure money, hopefully with the state name, or something. And also, the CDBG block grants, if they ever get off the ball on that one, will make a huge difference in a lot of this. So, that's, you don't know what you're gonna get till you get it. I just wanna throw that out there, Chief, for, potential discussions with them, if they could go to infrastructure, and maybe we could discuss whether we wanna have a joint business with them. Dispatcher.
That dispatch thing has been talked about for 20, 30,
Yeah.
40, I don't know, years, seriously, and the last conversation that I had part of was, I said, and I can show you, I'm serious, I can show you emails that go in 2004 where I was a commissioner and I made a run at it. In 2008, I made a run at it. In 2010, I can show you all those emails and I can tell you exactly what has changed. Nothing, and it didn't happen. Part of the problem was the last time I met with, the guys that were trying to sell us that idea, I said, my interest in it always was to, stop the redundancy and save some money. And their exact words were, oh no, this is gonna cost more than both of us together. I'm not interested in that. Ever. I mean, if it's gonna cost, if we could save money by having one instead of two, that makes total sense. But if us working together costs us more, that's ridiculous, just so you know.
If we can steer in that direction, I'm gonna leave from the,
We'll take it back and we'll refine it and bring it back.
we're all on the same page.
Did we, maybe we should do the same, our department has with water, sewer, just bring kind of like a, is that okay? Okay.
I have one question, and It is on the holding tank. Golf course, is that a repairable thing? It could save money there, or is it have to be replaced?
That's a worst case scenario. We suspect it's gonna cost probably a quarter of that. We finally figured out the problem. There's a gasket between the bottom of the tank and the top of the tank, so in-house, we can remove the top tank, put the gasket back on, or replace the gasket, put it back on. That was a worst case scenario, not knowing the actual cost, but I think it'll come in.
Okay, I was just kinda curious of that.
Actually, just taking a step back, with the water fund, knowing that we have about $1.3 million, got, the Rollins Water Supply, this is starting the whole loan process of, like, the engineering, 1.5 for that total giant project. You have, the impact assistance funds that would take care of them. That's the council that we think is, like, everything that we could towards, from Show Cherry to the water. And after that, I guess what I'm looking from, is just a number we can work with, because then we can come back and highlight, okay, we wanna do one through 8, for example, on this list, or two through 8, because we have $1.3 million. And actually, if, right there, this top part from the water, if we did all of those, that would bring us to 300,000. That would do, these water meter replacements, Glen addition, engineering, leak tank protection, all those different things. And if we added in, like, the lead, service track compressor, and actually, if we did all of the requests, that would bring us to 558,000, so that would only use not even half of what we have in reserve. So, maybe.
On that filter leak, just for the heck of it, I know we bought 2, and 2 are working.
Yeah, we're still waiting for one to come in. This is to have like another set just sitting there.
Another one. You say set,
Because there's 4 of the big filters, and then they have like, I don't know how many leads go within each one.
but the $100,000 paid for one filter worth of leads. Okay. Yeah, I was confused.
With knowing that we're gonna, it sounds like, move forward with the rate increases, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable to try and knock these off the list of what they requested for FY '23 first. We would only use not even half of that reserve.
Without further study, I don't necessarily have heartburn on what you're suggesting, but I would want to think about it.
Just put it in writing and let us chew over it.
Okay.
That's what I would suggest.
Oh, I guess we wouldn't, there's these 2 more to do some more water between alleyways. Or we could even do that. The sewer, got that 278,000, so of the yellow items, the yellow items are 170,000, so we could do those, that they were requesting. And again, we can kind of maybe give you the final recommendation. So it kind of sounds like what we need to do is just go back and make a final recommendation, what we'd like to do.
That seems like to me, this is full, have to have. Right now, we're just kind of like that idea.
And even though, I mean, I just wanna put this out there, even though that some people are, are gonna give us exactly what the minimum they have to have, if there's extra and there's other problems, we can always readdress it.
That's right.
But I would like to start doesn't make it, like, you know, all hopes that it will, and it doesn't, then we can readdress that. I don't wanna do 5,000 budget adjustments, but we can do a few of them and probably save a lot of money deferring it again, but we don't have any choice.
In fact, it's just been work on that. Our agenda, we're just to the miscellaneous items, nonprofit, ancillary funding, Freedom Day, COLA, salary study, just all of, anything that the council would like to give us feedback on.
I would like to, park that salary study for a year. I would like to keep things where they're at. I would like to see, lower paid people in our city, maybe the lower half or something to that effect, get COLA raises. They didn't get any for the last few years, is my understanding. Free dump days, I'll be honest with you, I think we ought to do away with them. But if we do keep them, I think we ought to think about a half price thing. In other words, you have to pay, but you can pay half price. It costs us half as much, but I'd like to do away with them entirely, and I'll tell you why. It's because that money comes out of the funds that we have for dilapidated buildings. We don't have enough money to take care of the dilapidated buildings, and every year we shoot ourselves in the foot by giving money away to free dump days. Free dump days sound great. The first few years, I think we ended up with a cleaner city. I think people have gotten used to it, and I swear, they have free dump days, and the day that's over, they start storing more stuff in their backyard for next year's free dump day. So I don't think we end up with a cleaner city. And, as far as the nonprofit and ancillary funding, I'd sure like to at least fund them to the point that we did last year. The reason for that is they perform so many absolutely necessary, services that they can't really look anyplace else for that funding. That's the whole package for me. Councilman Smith?
Yeah, on ancillary, and I know I do support mental health in the community, but I would like to strike that because they get insurance money and they also get support by the state, and then they have sliding scales for people, so they're not gonna go away, they're not gonna be hurt, and people will. If you take that out, I would still like to fund those agencies that feed children, and senior services where they are feeding adults and the other agencies feeding children, to fund them at their request, because they only up that because of the. And then, on this $40,000 for the airport, I'm not sure if I understood it correctly, Sean, but, if the county would do 20 of that and we do 20, I think that's a fair thing to do.
Whatever, I think that's what they're gonna try and figure out is what dollar amount that needed to be, just try and match it.
Don't have any, let's see. But, okay, chamber, I put 10,000, but they are having some issues. Economic development, at 15,000, that we've been doing that. I don't have a problem. Old penitentiary for 20,000, I don't have a problem with that. Well, they're asking for 35, so that's questionable. If the county would throw some money in, we can do 25 if they could.
They were gonna see if they could do.
We just cut out how much, whatever they matched to come up to that amount.
And I hardly support 50,000 for the TDA. Yeah. For our airport, 20,000, contingent upon the. And I said something, the seniors, I had 20,000, I guess I put it in there. Self-development, I wanted to fund 6 because we see agreed thing, and that's a request, so what they do the children. So, I would send them at their request because they're in dire need and they don't get from anywhere else. For Boys and Girls Club, I'm open to 1,250 or 15,000, depending on what the other council. Cathedral Home provides, have to give them 20 of their 20,000 of their 25 requests. Counseling Center Zippo. Program definitely, we need that because it's
some of these nonprofits, especially health organizations, there's a lot of ARPA funds. If we do have to do some for any agency, or 501c6 or 501c, a governmental agency, they can apply for additional funding.
Okay.
So I think we need to, I was thinking outside the box, is making sure we have ideas where they could go get funding. Money,
Yeah.
all the nonprofits and the 501c6s to get money, and most of them did. And so this idea
so that's still there.
there's new money coming out. I'm just using that as an example.
Okay.
In 501c6s, 501c3s, most of them, or a lot of them, a majority of them got funding. That's another thing we could think of is going. Thinking outside the box.
Great idea. Leveraging our money. And Pet Partners, I'm not gonna, it's one of my favorite things, but I'm not going to recommend any. Sorry, I'd like to probably leave it at it. The Pet Partners. I'll let you say what you'd like on that.
No, my thinking is, you gotta leave the way it was last year, except for the exception of some of the agencies that buying the food. Those.
Seniors and the two.
Seniors, Child Development, and Project Reach.
Mhm.
Others are, back to what we
Allow.
those are, Carbon County. But anyway, they were only asking for 500 more. They're not, it wasn't even,
Who's that one?
I'll
Oh,
ask,
yeah.
ask this.
I tend to agree with you on the, counseling center because of their other avenues of revenue, than to just
But we're doing no harm if we.
not reading a program.
Right.
Yeah, so I'll try to. I'm a big supporter of dogs, I'll tell you that.
Mr. Mayor,
Hi, Aaron.
Yes.
I just wanted to address real quick, as far as the airport goes, I would just remind the council that in 2020, the airport got COVID money, and so they told the city and the county that they didn't need to put any money forward. And then in 2021, we did not receive any money either. It was a little bit of a misunderstanding. I think there was some that got that got appropriated, but there was a misunderstanding and we didn't think that there was. So I realize that that's a big chunk to be asking for this year, but we have asked for nothing for the last 2 years. So it's kind of almost like 2 years got rolled into one because last year we didn't disperse anything. And that money is going strictly to funding a manager that's out there that will plow the roads and keep the weeds mowed down. And it's literally a funding a body out there to maintain the grounds. So just to kind of clarify that a little bit.
Well, Aaron, I kind of agree with that, but what we're talking about, at least what I was talking about last meeting was county putting their share in, trying to get them to get involved with the airport also?
Well, and I get that, and I understand your point. I guess I would just remind you, they just put a couple $100,000 into that youth center, and they're probably gonna be pretty limited on funds. And I'm not saying that that doesn't mean that they can't contribute. I'm just saying that, remember that that also just happened from the county.
I understand, and I would agree with, Councilman Martinez on everything, from the previous year. Fordham, besides the counseling center, I agree with Councilwoman Smith on that also. And then just give the increases due to food costs and stuff like that for the for the increase for the children and stuff like that. I also wanna say I agree with Councilwoman Smith on the, 20,000 for the airport board. It is a joint power still, and we need to hold the county, accountable for their half of that too. And, I would like to see it as, in a matching fund of what they do, contingency, like Councilwoman Smith said, but up to 20,000. And if they give 15,000, we only match at 15. And that's, I believe that's the only way we're gonna get the county back into doing what they said they were gonna do to when this stuff started, and then just dropped it, is we just gotta drop some of it too.
Aaron, are we doing any harm if we don't give you more than 20,000? And we would like to have 20,000 from the county, is that still gonna meet your needs?
I have an answer for you. There's some things that we're working on that I would prefer not to say out loud because it could jeopardize, it's one of those things where if everybody knows what's going on, then maybe other people start trying to play the game. It's very possible, but I mean, that's fine. I mean, I guess my question to you then would be, if the county says nothing, are you gonna fund nothing?
My opinion would be we give you the $20,000 no matter what, but we'd like to ask the county to match it. I don't wanna leave you guys in the lurch because you are important in infrastructure to this county.
And then I guess I would also say that I disagree with taking money from any of the other place. I understand insurance and stuff, but that stuff doesn't go as far as you'd like to think it does. So I just, on the side, I disagree with removing anybody from the list. I would fund everybody.
Again, questions and food for thought. The old pen, I'm not sure how he does, but it was one of those organizations. She's a quasi-governmental agency, not allowed to play in the pot of the 501c. So, there's a couple of us, or her especially, that did funding, so much too.
The other thing about the old pen that just happened to him was they applied for 2 grants, $500,000 each, got both grants. Everything's great, they're halfway through with their project. I was asked to sit in on a conference call where they explained that HUD had decided that their project was not in compliance, and so half of their funding went away. So right in the middle of their project, she had to go out and tell the contractors, pack your stuff, you're done, you gotta leave. So they are gonna need extra help.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Just to get over the hump, to get that project to a reasonable stopping point.
Another consideration, I think, that since we're gonna decrease our expenses across the board, that should be a consideration. To to do that, I think a good employee looking for some of these process, for sure.
Problem is, the nonprofits don't get a lot of other help from other places, other than the ones that we mentioned, and like Cove. Can't even imagine a world without that organization. I sadly have to have it, because we do have to have it. You know, a lot of these are run by volunteers and such like that to start with, and so you cut them, I hate to cut them very far.
You know, get some help somehow, and I know we're gonna be running short-handed ourselves in the city, but somehow they're coming to us, but somehow we need to figure a way out to help them in the avenue of showing them other funding too, that they could get to maybe offset this amount for the future too, right? Like, they could have that in their bag to come forward and say, oh, we only need 5,000, we have 20,000 from this grant. You know, because I think a lot of those individuals might not understand and know that, especially in the volunteer world, you might not understand that. So if we could, as an organization, help them gain some of that knowledge, I mean, I think that would help us in the end too.
I would like it. I would like to, if the board would asking for them to have classes, show them where those grants. So that is an option.
That would be an
We
option.
haven't had a full-time grants writer forever, and so I don't think we fully know the effect she can have also with working with you to help.
And I think Andrea, and even, I think Andrea is doing an amazing job, and that shouldn't be, she wants to stay focused on that. In 16 years, she's learned, you know, where, and it's up to next year that if she didn't have to work on, with those guys, that's something you actually have the DD.
We accept your volunteers.
Yeah.
Observation here, with just a nonprofit, you, and the 146,000 that we have here, hired 2 writers, and all they could do is write grants for all these people, just put this into perspective. Had one person that's all they were doing was just writing grants. Probably end up leveraging this larger amount.
But they would be gone by the time those grants got there, because by the time we hired somebody and they got the grant, these places would be gone.
Exactly, just the observation and total.
Yeah. Well, there's,
I can speak for Andrea, we already did discuss this, and she comes to the city with a background in working with nonprofits, so that's a huge advantage, and, I would also echo what Sean is saying, that, in times when we're trying to figure out a tough budget, being creative and finding ways to leverage is gonna be to our benefit. And that's certainly the opportunity we have with our other, you know, between innovation and grants, we have that opportunity in front of us.
Taking that on.
well,
And helping out.
I agree, other than the timing part.
Yes.
You know, it's like, if your dog starves to death, feeding it twice as much next year, so dead.
And that's why I say, I agree with what we're saying and offering, right? And
I
but
don't understand, no.
No,
Not clear to me what you're saying.
with what we have said, we wanna bring to keep and fund, but maybe for the future, like I said.
Well,
you know,
yeah, we should be helping them all
Yes.
along, I mean, that just.
And that's what I'm saying.
But,
I'm not saying cut this and
but as far as
get grant.
cutting these very far, they provide so much service that no one else does. If there was other options, it'd be different, but, Boys and Girls Club, go up there sometime, it's amazing. Cove, the Crisis Center, we're either gonna pay for one here, or we're gonna pay for one we've paid for several in Natrona County, might as well pay for one here. The Counseling Center, I agree, they have their own, they have a way of getting their own funding, but like Pet Partners, we could cut them some, but how many unneutered cats you want in your neighborhood, you know? I mean, it's just one of those things. So as far as I'm
That has nothing to
concerned,
do with the neuter.
we need to,
Stink. Cats running around loose, you can't control those cats, and they're running all over there.
yeah, but neutered
We're
cats,
paying to let them loose.
newsflash, neutered cats don't reproduce, Devari.
I know that, they don't reproduce, but the ones that they're turning loose, they still go to the gardens and they still go to the flower beds, and we have to put up with it. We're held hostage by the deer and the cat, and now talking about the dogs.
Well,
You get tired of it after a while.
but to cut their funding isn't helping them accomplish the goal.
What's the goal? To turn them loose
No,
because they're neutered?
no, to downsize the herds.
Well, we sure haven't done a very good job of my neighborhood, I can tell you that.
Quit feeding them.
Yeah, right.
I just had to say that.
He had to get his blood boiled.
Okay, where are we at?
Sounds like we have enough information, we'll have to put some numbers in front of you.
Good luck.
We'll do our best, and then you can hash it out.
Right.
And then the free dump days, does everyone feel the same right now about us cutting that out from the budget? That's what it's leaning towards, but I don't know. Pull that out for now?
I disagree with the mayor, I respect his opinion on it. And we've done it for years, and it's one of the, I know everybody say what it's done for those 2 weeks, but it is a project in the city where people flash, they call it beautification.
I removed the dumpers out this year.
Don't have a problem the way we have it. That showed a lot of improvement around. People out there take advantage of programs. Our goal is to try to.
Would echo Councilman Martinez and Councilwoman Smith, all due respect to the others, I just think, we pushed a beautification issue and this is something that would help maintain this, we need to keep it.
This doesn't affect the, cleanup days, right? So, it doesn't affect that, this affects homes.
Still beautification, your neighbor is a beautifying part of the city also, that's how I feel.
I wish the person, that ran the landfill was here, because he would tell you the same thing I'm telling you, that when they were unloading that stuff, there were rats and mice and everything else running out of those piles that people took out of their backyard and took to the dump, and that came out of his mouth. The fact of the matter is that pile of stuff with the mice in it was in somebody's backyard, and they were being saved for a year, so they could take it to the dump a year from now, and stuff like that, and that's a problem.
think the cat would take care of the mice.
Well, mine got good.
I know it's been discussed with some of the, management team, but landfill is not under my area, so I'm a little bit out of line, but one option, instead of having a free day where people could go, would be citizens would have token or something where they could go any day of the year they chose for that free delivery. That would address the backlog, that would address people storing stuff up on their property. It also assist with code enforcement. If we were trying to work with somebody to clean up their property and we said, you know, you get a free turn to go to the dump to get rid of all this stuff. Today's a great day. That would probably help the code enforcement. I'm speaking out of turn because it's all.
Code enforcement is.
Well, so we would still lose the revenue, but it would spread the opportunity for people to take advantage of that to whatever it was most advantageous for.
And I know on the landfill side, that's where to see how they funds. We are looking at other avenues of the free landfill days. And I don't think it'll take effect this year, but how they keep track of all their paperwork and then what system they're running, so we can try.
Well, it's just, anytime you let somebody use the service for free, I don't care whether it's all on one day or all spread out or here or there or whatever, it still is a cost to the city. And the heartburn I get is because it comes out of the account that's supposed to take care of derelict buildings. And if you look at our strategic plan or you talk to anybody, they will start talking to you about this ugly pink motel down here. And every year we get $30,000 further away from tearing something like that down because we gave it away at free dump days. But if we want free dump days, we can have that. If we want them ugly buildings, we can have those too. So personally, the free dump days, is very costly, and it gets abused by so many people that it has become counterproductive. People are storing stuff in their yard, and I was walking around our neighborhood, there's a guy, and he's like, I'm waiting for free dump days. I bet that pile of crap that he staggered over and scooped snow around and all that would have been $20. But he had to save it for a year. I guess he was beautifying his driveway, hell, I don't know. Anyway.
Do we have a consensus or no?
Are you on the phone there, Aaron?
I am in support of the dump days.
Okay.
The ones where we charge or the free ones?
All of them.
All of them, okay.
I would even be open to maybe looking at doing it twice, and you could have one in the spring and one in the fall, and then maybe people wouldn't stockpile if they had another day, another time of year to go, maybe, I don't know. But I mean, in the end, I support it. When you figure it's that much, I mean, you're talking about tons of garbage. It's literally pulled off the street. So I have a hard time saying no.
I wanna hear about tearing down old buildings and not having the money to do it with.
They got $410,000 there.
So we can do this for 10 more years, and then that'll be gone.
If we start charging that pink building some money, the way it is, if we started putting the pressure on the landlords that live back east, maybe we could get that building cleaned, or maybe they'd do it themselves. But we don't do nothing, we just let it sit there. It has nothing to do with collecting a few bucks or giving a few bucks.
The upcoming FY 23 that we budgeted just a little bit differently, instead of just coming out of the fund, we shifted over to the general fund. So it's gonna run out of funds to have a more more sustainable way to do it. Just FYI.
Thank you.
Cost of living,
Oh, cost of living.
I would like to see cost of living raises, at least for the lower paid people for our city that didn't get raises the last few years. I don't know where that line would be, but with inflation being what it is, cost of living for the, at least the lower paid folks is, necessary.
It should be not just the lowest. It should be a cost.
I just know some people didn't get raises for the last few years, and I don't feel right about that.
I know it's awkward, particularly if we have to riff. But yeah, we've got a lot of people out there that work. And we tried what we gave. Needed, if we can possibly, with all the cuts and stuff, so we have to take care of our people. I don't know how to do it, I don't wanna cut theirs. I don't wanna make, start paying $100 on their insurance or anything. But I think we can leave it out somewhere. Talking too loud.
Yeah, could we do something if you've had, let's say you've had a cost of living raise the last 4 years, you on this list, but we, everybody who has, this,
You look into some of those options, because some of them will be legal, some won't. And maybe give us some advice how we can possibly do that next time.
I, 2 years ago, when I first started, we did a cost of living increase, and it was across the board, so every position. Now, we've hired a lot since, so that would be, they wouldn't have had a cost of living increase, but they got hired in that time frame. Does that make sense?
And
So,
that's what I was gonna say, is when I look down at certain things, some people were hired in at a higher rate, it looked like, than, others possibly would have been, and I could agree with Daryl, on that strategy, if you didn't get it, or if you were moved into a newer, higher paying position, stuff like that, contract employees don't get it, stuff like that, so if you could look into that.
The thing that we did a couple of times when it was really, really tough, give COLA raises, we do bonuses. It isn't permanent on the bottom line, but you get like, if we can't do COLA, maybe we can look at doing bonus. We knew we couldn't give anything. Off that,
The
the bonus thing does make some sense, because it's a one-time deal where you're not obligating yourself for the, so, that makes sense.
I could support that. I would just, and I really want the employees, you know, to understand that, this is not a situation that we take lightly and we want to have to be in, you know, and we do appreciate all their hard work. There's nothing more, valuable to the city and this organization than their hard work and dedication that they have chosen, you know. I said this in the past, is people work for a government entity due to the fact of benefits and security. They don't go to a private industry because of that reason a lot of times. So, and I understand that wholeheartedly, and I want them to understand, you know, we support them in everything they do, and we don't look forward to this.
Another direction?
Is there any discussion on the salary study?
Ben?
I already said what I thought.
Yeah, I appreciate the hard work that went into that. Given the situation, we need to see how we're next year going. Seeing all the needs that are health and safety. Look at it, Stephanie. We want to do what we can for our employees. With better, or, you're working on and I need a minute. $1 million for Airport Road. Shovel-ready project is wonderful, but $1 million we can't afford. So what I'd like to put in here is concrete. The Wyoming Business Council used to give money to shovel-ready project. I think they didn't listen. I don't think Grable has one, but other communities. While we need to cut it, it isn't something that we should ignore.
One question, like, out in the weeds on this, moving money around, I know we can't pay from the enterprise to the general. Kind of discussed this with you the other night, and I'm not clear on it yet, but services like the fire department, the police department, we spread out the cost of those to the landfill and the water and the sewer, because their services that are needed to move some of that money.
You have to be careful with what you do, but they already do that. They spread the central shop expense. I can't remember how many of, Dan started this. If you go through the budget, you will see where they transfer money to certain.
And that's what I was thinking,
Yeah,
we do that with IT.
And we do it with central shop and some other places. Well,
Community
development and
development.
stuff like that spread across, some of the salaries are spread across. But, you're saying like fire and police?
Right, because at some point they may need them, so if that, each
this is a windy question, but I think when you get into, you have to be really careful about funding a non-position.
Did you pay for this?
Like a central, landfill has central shop fix their equipment, so
Right.
we can charge that to that. I don't know about fire, police, or other, that would be a question when
Might be worth, it's worth a look.
It's worth a look.
It's worth a look if you could spread some, we have.
Gave us the new number. I think there could be some there, and just like, I think, fire department, over to the water treatment plant. They're working with the chlorine, with the SCBA's and safety.
Yeah.
It's just, there might be some opportunity. Not some big dollars, but maybe some dollars. That's what we're trying to look at everything, so.
If Wendy would look into, I wanted to know another question too, because it's been bothering me. When the general fund loans money to like enterprise fund, we were told previously that we didn't have to pay that back after. So the city would not have to pay. Prior years, I was told that we had to pay it back. I want to know the question really. When you're dealing with enterprise funds, general fund makes a loan to the enterprise fund. Pay it back, or is it forgivable after? Yeah.
On these enterprise funds, I was always under the impression that, like, for instance, you could not charge more for your water, so you could, build a park. You can't overcharge for the landfill, so you can, else.
Right.
But I've always been under the impression that you could invest in those enterprises. Am I right or wrong? Well, like, for instance, if the city has $1 million in their general fund and our water needs work, we don't have to pay that million back. We can invest in our water system, but we cannot charge more for our water to pay for a road,
No, it can't be.
that kind of a thing. But it's my impression that if we want to improve one of our enterprise fund, operations, we can. We can put money in, we just can't charge too much to take it out and spend it someplace else. And I believe I'm correct.
I believe you are.
So that going back and forth and some of that stuff seemed a bit crazy to me, but
And I'll get you in trouble.
anyway, a little bit more work for you is, can you explain, I would like to have a really good explanation of how funds can go in and out of these enterprise funds. Because I think I'm right, but I'd like to know.
That's standalone.
Well, they do, but,
Can't raise the,
well, you can't raise the water rate so that you can build a racetrack. But you,
fund into the park, into the landfill, and then raise the fee at the landfill.
well, no, you can put money into the landfill,
That's right.
but you can't raise the fee so you can build a racetrack.
Wendy,
You know,
They're making too much,
you can't take money out of, you can't charge too much to take money out of there and do something else with. But if you need to, you can put money in. I'd like to know that for a fact.
yeah. And the other question I've been stewing over, we have all the water lines we have an enterprise fund that is strictly for water. When the general fund, we're getting these grant funds and we're getting our own money impact funds that we're using, do we have to account for those in the enterprise fund? Or how do we handle that? I know Dan would know, but how do we handle that to make sure it's absolutely legal? But we're gonna go out and get all this money, hopefully, for water line. I've been thinking, do we have to put all of that in the water fund?
Okay. The grants and how that works. So let's say we anticipate $1 million grant in the grant fund. So we expect there to be $1 million. And, water fund initially, so it's expensive. So I think for the auditors, they can say, this is in our infrastructure that we have to depreciate over time. Over so that they offset each other in the grant fund. The whole project is tracked in the grant.
And I always rent stuff out. About enterprise.
But it is the council.
But it's in and out, okay.
Anything else? I have cats to feed at home. I gotta give him a bad time, nobody else will.
Oh, I think we all did.
Do any of you have any questions about it?
Yeah. Maybe we should see if any department has.
That's what I want to know.
Any feedback. Is there any feedback from anyone in the room that they'd like to share with council? Maybe you haven't considered or need to talk about it with Tuckers?
We help out in any way we can. Like, keep things going, we will.
One thing I'd like to point out, I've been in this position before, and, I know we can do this, but, on one of the capital items, you'll notice there's a workforce parking lot, it is a rollover, it's actually a rollover. We were trying to project to the company. In times like this, $125,000 to workforce parking lot at the rec center and baseball fields, not enough time to spend that money.
So one thing I'd like to mention, I presume, bring up, there is a way to reduce that. A lot of the cost is with, some printers have particular and the whole punch. Back when Capital Business came to me, that certain printers weren't used as much as others. That definitely can be analyzed to reduce the cost of the actual. And then the other thing to include with that is we also have the contract. That can definitely be a discussion of, do we actually continue with that contract? Because we already have the printers, why do we need the individual? Those dedicated printer can't.
Well, depends on how far you have to run to in front of the printer and such like that, and having those finishing devices, I think they're called finishers on the end of a printer that fold, staple, and all that sort of thing. You don't need them, you don't need them, but if you do need them, they're tremendous time savers.
I wasn't trying, I got a lot of stuff highlighted, I wasn't just trying to pick right on the IT, but when you have a huge budget like that in there and everything got moved over, and I had been asking about stuff like that the whole year before even, so, I mean, it's just something that I'm gonna pull out of there and start looking at too.
No, and that makes sense. No, it's just, there are ways to reduce the cost.
Yeah, thanks.
Just to quickly finish up the proposed balanced budget, or once we can do our work and get it back to the council, the goal is to have it ready for pickup on April 22nd. Friday. And, so we have a lot
Yeah.
You're right, 19th, and then the 26th would be where we, will bring this back to council.
A special meeting?
Well, I was gonna tell you, I was gonna ask
There
for
won't be a
$50 raise for each special meeting we have to have, along with
Yeah.
that one incentive for coming.
Yeah.
That's a
special
short
meeting
trip,
at 6 o'clock.
but I won't be getting fined for that.
I'm over special meetings. 100% over it. I'll tell you how I feel about it. I even said that the other night at planning and zoning, you know? Yeah.
Mayor, are we adjourning?
We're adjourned.
Appreciate you all.
I should have said it louder, huh?
I didn't hear you.